Why can't I get help managing my pain? Have you been to the doctors to get your pain treated and no doctor will treat you because they think you're drug seeking? Then stay tuned because this is for you. Hey everybody, welcome to Don't Punish Pain with Claudia Merandi. And I want to welcome my first guest. Her name is Beverly Schekman. She is from Raleigh, North Carolina. She is what we refer to as a pain warrior. Beverly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, and you know, Bev, you and I we connected about 4 years ago, or maybe it was 3.5 years ago. You know, I'm not good with times. And, we met on a social media group, a support group for people with Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
And I know the struggling that I've been through in my life with Crohn's disease. And you were so kind to share with me your journey. And you've come a long way with your illness.
Yeah.
You've lost, you changed your diet, which isn't always effective for people with Crohn's disease. You implemented exercise, you upped your water. I'm a big fan of a lot of water. And how much weight have you lost?
81 pounds.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Thank you.
The transformation in you is unbelievable. Sometimes when I sit here and I look at you, I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm so proud to be your friend. I know you were nervous about doing this podcast today. I know you are on maintenance medication to manage what kind of medication are you on to manage your Crohn's?
So I'm on a biologic, I'm on Cimzia, and I'm on an immunosuppressant daily, Imuran. The biologic, I take 2 shots every 2 weeks. And then periodically prednisone when I have flare-ups.
Okay. And you spent a good amount of time in the hospital with your illness.
I did. Especially before biologics really were used for Crohn's. I spent a lot when I first was diagnosed. It was really just prednisone and IV steroids and back then pain control and nausea control. And then they finally found a good medication combination about, I would say 3 years ago or so. Even when my Crohn's was controlled, I had severe joint pain, and it took a really long time for them to actually send me to a rheumatologist and diagnose me with psoriatic arthritis. And when they gave me a higher dose of the biologic for psoriatic arthritis, that's when I really started to see a lot of symptom relief.
And you're a mom to 2 teenagers. So, and you have a husband, you have a house to maintain. There's a lot of challenges with our illness, and your experience mirrored my experience. I think we were both inpatient for about 10 years.
Yeah, really monthly, sometimes twice a month, sometimes longer, sometimes in for more than a month. Yeah, there's a lot.
And we're not always greeted with compassion and empathy when we go to the emergency room, because let's face it, part of having Crohn's disease is pain. It's pain, it's extreme fatigue, it's weight loss, sometimes it's weight gain, high fevers. There's so much that comes along with our illness. And when I organized the Don't Punish Pain Rally organization, I wanted to bring awareness to what was happening to people with pain and how we were treated in the emergency room. Were you always treated with compassion, with empathy?
No, it's so interesting. When I was in college and first diagnosed, it was never an issue. They just treated pain when I was in the hospital. I never had to, I didn't know anything differently. And they even made a comment to me in the 90s saying, just be very grateful that this isn't 10 years ago, because in the 80s, even people who were dying didn't get pain medication, adequate pain medication, because they were afraid they were going to become addicted. And I was like, that's crazy. I'm so glad that, and here we are all over again. I mean, then I used to be treated with compassion. I mean, the random doctor was rude. One of the things that really took me to the hospital more than anything else was kidney stones. Like I have chronic kidney stones, which is common with Crohn's. Yeah. I would have passing kidney stones causing kidney infection, sepsis, all of that. And it was never an issue. And then just about when you started speaking out about it, that I saw you on the Crohn's pages, maybe 5 years ago, right around the same time as when I started having issues in the emergency room and in the hospital.
Right. And when I started to hear the word drug seeker,
Yep.
I was appalled.
Yeah.
And I remember one emergency room doctor told me and my mom that I always had an advocate with me because I could see how it was shifting and how pain patients were being treated like people.
Yeah.
Addiction. But we do recognize that people with addiction need to be treated with compassion and empathy. Yeah. But this country seems to hate two groups of people with pain and addicts. The country really
absolutely. I mean, and I actually think that pain patients don't realize, or people with chronic illness, we don't realize that the reason they're treating us so horribly is because of the stigma of addiction. And they really just hate people with addiction. They hate them. They don't understand them. They think they're lowlifes. They think it's a character flaw. They think they're going to, kind of like that reefer madness idea, they're going to go, murder you and steal everything you have to buy drugs. And it's just a really unfortunate stigma that should not be there. But now they're trying to remove it from addiction, which is lovely. But unfortunately, it's being placed right on people with pain. And I don't think a lot of us know how to deal with it. I think it caught us, it took us by surprise, and there's not really a whole lot we could do about it because we can't talk to our doctors, because anything we say is looked at as drug seeking. No matter what we do, it's always drug seeking. And it used to be, if you go to the hospital and you have pain and we can't figure out what's causing it, we might question you. And I get that. I understand that. But now you can have limbs falling off and they're still going to tell you you're drug seeking. It's insane. My brother had a kidney stone for the first time his entire life. And they said to him, we need to make sure you're not drug seeking. And it's just everybody.
Yeah. And why do you think this is happening? Do you think the 2016, so in 2016, for the listeners, the CDC put out some guidance, the same way the CDC's put out guidance for people to wear masks in the middle of the COVID, I should say. So the CDC published guidelines. They're referred to as opioid prescribing guidelines. And these guidelines were intended, if I'm not mistaken, for primary care physicians, because there was a period of time when overprescribing was happening. I believe that was perhaps in the late 90s, contrary to what the fake news tells the public, that prescribing was at the highest in 2016. And there's nothing scientific support. There's no data supporting that.
No.
Do you think these 2016 CDC guidelines played a role in people not being able to access pain medication?
Yeah, I think it's a bunch of things. I think for sure the false narrative is one thing, saying that prescription drugs are leading this opioid crisis, because that's false. But these CDC guidelines were based on very, very little evidence. As we know, they were done in a very shady manner. Mm-hmm. They weren't transparent. It was very skewed. The people, if you look at all the people on the work group and all the people that were put there, were already anti-opioid zealots for the most part. They didn't have pain management doctors who could help us or support us. And they really disregarded any kind of concern that groups had about what was happening. And so, they were pushed through, and they always say, oh, they're only guidelines. You can't blame us for that. But laws were based on these guidelines, and doctors are getting in trouble based on these guidelines, and algorithms are written with these guidelines written in. So if you are a doctor and you prescribe over this arbitrary 90 MME limit, you're going to get flagged, and so is the patient, and it's based on no scientific evidence. But they do call it evidence-based, and then they put out a clarification. Oh, this is just a guideline, don't misapply it.
So there had to be some controversy in order for the CDC and the FDA the FDA almost, not a black box warning, but a press release went out, and it said, listen, you cannot abruptly cut these people off of their pain medication because there were reported suicides. Let's talk about who helped write these CDC guidelines. I think they were opioid consultants, paid opioid consultants.
I mean, Roger Chow was one of the main writers. He was already very involved in other pain guidelines. He was out in Oregon, and he already had a very strong anti-opioid stance. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at some of the people on the work group, they were all PROP members. PROP is Physicians for Responsible Opioid Prescribing. And they were their whole goal, their whole mission was to make it so that people couldn't get pain medication. They promoted a false narrative on purpose. They formed in 2012 and said, look, we're over prescribing and this is a problem. And and they were asked to look at these guidelines, and they were the ones on the work group. They were the scientific advisors, and they were pushed through with a mission. They had a goal in mind, which is really no opioids for pain.
Really, it almost sounds like their mission is to punish people with pain. I want to talk about so these paid opioid consultants. They're Andrew Kolodny with the organization Prop, Jane Ballantyne, Anna Lemke. So most of these people, a lot of them are psychiatrists.
Yeah.
Really, they didn't want a whole lot of pain management doctors. The one pain management doctor that is on that group, Prop, Jane Ballantyne, she's a paid opioid consultant. And where I'm sitting, it looks like there's a whole lot of people who are profiting. They're cashing in on the illicit fentanyl overdosing epidemic. And I know for the people who are watching this, they're probably, they're thinking, well, opioids are so addictive. Why not try cannabis? But cannabis isn't legal in your state.
No, cannabis is not legal in my state. And even if it were, I wouldn't be able to afford it. It's not like it's covered from insurance. I'd be happy to try it. I would love to try it for pain. Mm-hmm. I'm very fortunate right now in my illness. I do not need daily pain medication, but there was a time that I did. And I definitely felt like I was treated like a criminal at the pain management centers. But yes, these doctors were already profiting.
Bev, I want to talk with you briefly. When you were struggling to find a pain management doctor, a doctor had the audacity to put you on a highly addictive medication that's used to treat addiction. That medication's called Suboxone.
Yes. So I was back then, it was probably, 2012-ish. They were saying, if you're on short acting pain medication and you take it all throughout the day, you need to switch to long acting. Now, of course, they've gone against that, and it's even in the guidelines that shouldn't be. But so they sent me to a pain management doctor because that's how they were told to do it then. Before then, it was just my GI doctors or primary care who was treating pain. And they put me on, a long-acting pain medication with a few breakthrough pain pills in case something, there was a flare-up. And it actually was pretty bad for me because I never felt like I needed a long-acting in my system all the time. I just needed it for when kidney stones were passing, or when I had a severe flare-up, or my joints, or some kind of acute issue. And I was left, I think they gave me 10 breakthrough pills a month. And anytime I had an issue, I would have to call and beg, literally beg. That's how it was. That's what was in the contract. So there was one time where I had severe, a severe abscess. And, with Crohn's medicine, immunosuppressants, you can get septic pretty quickly. You have to take care of these issues. So I went to the dentist, and he said, look, you have an abscess. We can't do anything now. Put you on antibiotics. I want to put you on some pain medication. And I said, I'm not allowed to take it. And he's like, well, here's the problem. Because of Crohn's, you can't take an NSAID like Advil, and you're going to end up in the hospital because this is excruciatingly painful. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? I already called my doctor, and he said, no, we can't give you any more medication.
Well, it sounds like you're a parolee.
I felt exactly like that. It was atrocious. I felt like I had eyes on me at all times, that nothing I could do was right. And I was having to call and beg, literally call and beg. And so the dentist said, I will take care of this for you. I will call your pain management doctor. I'm giving you 5 pills. Take them. Mm-hmm. So that happened. Well, I don't know if the dentist never called, or I don't know if the pain management doctor didn't care. But the next visit, he didn't even come in. It was his nurse practitioner, which is what they tend to do. And she said, look, we're not giving you any more pain medication. Had a printout. You took 5 pills from this dentist. You're drug seeking. You're doctor shopping. And I explained to her what happened. And she's like, no, there's nothing we could do. We're stopping you from your medication. We're dismissing you. And I said, wait a second. I want to talk to the doctor because I can explain to you what happened. And she's like, no. And I said, well, I'm not leaving until you bring the doctor in here. So he came in.
Good.
And he said, the only thing that I'm going to do is send you to a Suboxone doctor in our practice. He said, but this is what's going to happen. I want him to do an assessment. And if he thinks that you have, I don't think back then they called it opioid use disorder. I think he called it addiction. If he thinks that you have signs of addiction, he will put you on Suboxone. If he doesn't, you could come back to me and we'll continue on your regimen. I was like, fine. I wasn't happy, but I was like, fine. My husband came with me to the doctor. We went. The second I walked in that room, he was obnoxious. He was nasty. He was cruel. He mocked me. He made fun of me. He picked on me. He joked with me. It was very demeaning from the second I walked in there. He gave me this huge list of questions. And then at the end, he said, you know what? You have some soft signs of addiction, which I couldn't get him to explain what that actually means. But he said, you don't qualify to have to be on Suboxone. You're not, you don't have addiction. Go back to your doctor. I'll let him know. Well, that night, like 9 o'clock at night, that Suboxone doctor called me. He said, look, the doctor changed his mind. He's not willing to take you back. It's either Suboxone or nothing.
Oh my gosh.
So at that point, I didn't really know much about Suboxone. I didn't know much about any of this, to tell you the truth. So I was like, okay, I mean, I'll try it. He wrote me a note.
It's just so for the viewers, does Suboxone, do you take it orally? Is it a transdermal, sublingual? What is it?
Yeah, sublingual. The one that I had was like a little sublingual patch thing you put in your mouth, and it kind of melts in your mouth, and you do it. I don't remember, twice a day, 3 times a day you take it. But what they didn't tell me is that the MME, the strength of it, is so incredibly high that I would not be able to get out of bed. I went from, a lower MME, I don't know what it was, but it was way lower, to they put me on the strength of what they would give someone who was, addicted to heroin, which is lovely, wonderful for them. But I was knocked out. Like I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was sleeping until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was walking into walls. I was scared to drive. I was on it for 4 months, and I did call to complain. I called and no one would help me. I called a lawyer. No one would help me. And he did write a note that said, I'm treating her for pain, not for addiction, in case I went to the emergency room, so they would treat me with kindness, which didn't help at all. Because what we didn't know back then is in order to get Suboxone covered, they have to give you an opioid use disorder diagnosis, which I didn't know.
It's because it's very expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive, and it's not FDA approved for pain.
Right.
So they have to say that you have opioid use disorder.
And Bev, you could have managed your pain with a $3 script of hydrocodone.
Well, that's it. That's all I need. And in fact, that's after I came off of it, that when I was able to find a decent doctor, that's what happened. And it was a lot better. But for those 4 months, and not only did it make me walk into walls, and I don't want anyone to think I'm saying anything bad about Suboxone. I think it's an amazing drug for people with addiction. I've heard amazing stories about how it gives them life and it helps them. And I love that. But for pain, it did help for pain at first. It did help my joint pain. And then it seemed to wear off around the 3-month mark for me. Sure. It just didn't work as well. And I would ask him about it, and he would literally laugh in my face. He laughed. He's like, you think I'm going to help you? I'm not going to help you. I'm not giving you anything.
These are such cruel people.
It was horrible.
And now we see this big push to take everybody off of FDA approved pain medication and put them on this hugely expensive medication, Suboxone. Yes. And history is repeating itself. We predict in 10 years, 1% of the population will be addicted to Suboxone. Suboxone.
It's not a very good, it's not an easy medication to come off of. For me, it wasn't. And the other problem is because it was so strong, we all know like narcotics have a slowing effect. Some people, it could give them bowel issues, but with Crohn's disease, it literally froze my colon. I ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks. Like it was really, really disturbing. And then when my next appointment with him, and I said to him, this is not helping my pain. It's making me feel drugged. Please switch me off. He dismissed me.
Yeah.
He didn't dismiss me there.
I'm so sorry that you've gone through this. You're off of Suboxone, thank goodness. Once again, for a person who's a heroin user, Suboxone can really change your life. But Beverly was, we got the short end of the stick with Crohn's disease. So I want to talk with you about one particular hospital stay. You went to the emergency room, you were admitted for kidney stones, and you are a survivor, traumatic abuse survivor.
Yeah.
And I know it's taken you many years to talk about this publicly, and we're so proud of you for sharing your stories.
Thank you.
I believe this story is going to help change the landscape of opioid prescribing. You were greeted with a hateful doctor at a hospital in North Carolina. You called me crying your eyes out. They refused to treat your pain associated with kidney stones, and you were probably having a Crohn's flare at the same time, because our disease does this. And this doctor refused to treat your pain for what reason?
Because I was a survivor of sexual abuse as a child.
No, and that makes no sense to people. So we just have to break this down.
Yeah. So this is the first time I actually spoke to you. I didn't know what to do. I was treated horribly in the hospital. They, again, mocked me, made fun of me, made me feel like I was crazy. Even though we had scans and tests and everything showed that I had kidney stones passing in the ureter, everything they needed to see. They did a tox screen before they even came in. They saw I had what I was supposed to have. And the way he found out is because he looked at my prescription drug history, the PDMP, and he saw that I had gotten Ativan in the past, and he wanted to know why. And I ignorantly answered him because I didn't know. I didn't know why he was asking me. I didn't know anything about the opioid risk, anything like that. So I answered him, and he said, because of that, your childhood history, your brain chemistry has changed. You're more likely to become addicted. And he did agree to give me the oral medication I was already taking at home in a little bit of a higher dose, but I was vomiting. Like I couldn't keep going down.
Sure.
Yeah. And he said to me, I promise you, if it doesn't work, we will help you. And that didn't happen. And then come to find out later, it was put in my medical records that I was drug seeking, malingering. They said I threatened suicide, which is not what happened. Like a lot of really false information in my medical records. I always tell people, don't tell anyone. If you are a survivor of sexual abuse, don't have it in your medical record. Just don't, because it will be used against you.
This is appalling. It sounds like you were re-victimized at this hospital.
Exactly what it felt like. I felt like I was being punished for something that wasn't my fault. And not only that, they were nasty about it. The way they spoke to me was so disrespectful and rude. And it was at a teaching hospital with a bunch of other residents in there, teaching all the young doctors on how to be nasty to women. And this is when I looked into why this happened. This is why I started researching. It's just been a ton of research since then to try to figure all of this out.
Sure. So today you are the lead researcher for an organization I know well, Punish Pain Rally organization, and also the nonprofit, the Doctor Patient Forum. I happen to know who owns that. Watching this, they're both mine. And I connected with Beverly, and this is so crazy, right? This is how, I don't know if people are watching this, if they believe in God. I believe in God, and God put you in my path. And your research has enlightened not only thousands and thousands of patients, but doctors who are targeted, because there are so many wonderful doctors who want to treat pain, but they've all been shut down by the feds. And this is why I'm doing this podcast, Don't Punish Pain, with Claudia, to bring awareness to what's happening to people like Beverly. She was re-victimized. She was born, we're born with this terrible disease, Crohn's disease. We've got to worry about our children inheriting it. We should not have to be treated like drug-seeking criminals at the emergency room. Now, eventually your research would lead us to all of the people who are profiting off of not only the false narrative against opiates, but there's people like, there's an organization, Shatterproof, and their mission was to help remove the stigma from addiction. But it seems like all they're doing is, in an effort to heal their pain, like Gary Mandel, the founder of Shatterproof, his son took his life, but he decided, well, let me capitalize off of my son's suicide, and we're going to create our mission to punish people with pain so they can never receive pain medication. And we're seeing a lot of this, these profiteers. Everybody wants to jump on that opioid gravy train, and your research is the driving force behind us able to get legislation, to be able to advocate for ourselves. And you had a difficult time at first advocating for yourself.
I did. And, thankfully I haven't had to go to the hospital it's been over 2 years now. I don't know what's going to happen the next time. I'm actually terrified. I don't know if I'll be able to speak up. I do know I feel like I found my voice a little bit. I think, when we kind of regrouped about 2 years ago and said, we need to stop what we're doing. It's not helping. And we need to try to figure out why this is happening. And so we kind of went back to the beginning, and it really is. I'm not saying like Gary Mandel or Andrew, I'm not saying that these people, it was their goal from the start. I don't know. I don't know if they started off wanting to help and ended up seeing dollar signs, but all I know is these people who keep claiming that we're all industry funded, which is what they tell anyone who advocates for a pain patient. They say they're industry funded, they take money from pharma, which mostly isn't true, but doctors do take money from pharma all the time. In fact, their group takes a lot of money from pharma, including opioid makers like buprenorphine. So I'm not fully sure as to why they keep saying that, except just to take the focus off of themselves. But they've made they make a lot of money in opioid litigation. And we've spoken about this before. I really do believe the main goal of those 2016 guidelines was to go after the bigger fish like Purdue. And you're seeing that happen as we speak. And they make a lot. Like Andrew Claudia made $500,000 last year as an expert witness for Johnson & Johnson. So these people are making a lot of money off of punishing us and pretending to help addiction, which they're not actually helping.
Sure. And now we're seeing people people on hospice, palliative care, people who are having amputations. Nobody is able to receive pain medication. And we can't live in a civilized society without FDA approved pain medication. But these sociopaths, they're actually, the sociopaths, the paid opioid consultants, they're actually trying to convince people to, quote, bupe it away, prescribe Suboxone for post-op, for acute pain, which would just be a nightmare. Now, with all of the safety measures put in place, you've got Lynn Webster's opioid risk tool, which was basically created just to punish women, right? Because men don't seem to be affected by the opioid risk tool. And then
it feels that way.
Yeah. And so then we have the PDMP, which that is where when you go to the pharmacy, a technician or the pharmacist puts into your electronic health records or something like that.
It's a database where they enter any controlled substances. Okay. So you could see if a doctor's prescribed it, they say they developed it for pharmacy to protect doctor shopping, prevent doctor shopping. But I actually think they did it to go after doctors. Considering it was funded by the DOJ, it seems like that's probably was their goal.
Wow. This is really crazy. We understand this topic intimately well because it's what we focused on. So with all of the safety measures put in place, I would imagine overdoses are way down.
They should be, right? You'd think, since most people dying and overdosing were those getting legitimate prescriptions from their doctors, you'd think it would have done.
Are they not? Because I would imagine opioid prescribing has been reduced by 47%. It's the lowest it's been in 20 years. Mm-hmm. Overdoses related to illicit fentanyl are up by 1,042%. Not fentanyl hospital, not the fentanyl that surgeons use, but they're up. But illicit fentanyl shipped in from China, from Mexico. Trying to get the word out to desperate people. Please never take a pill off the street.
Ever. That's right.
But with all of these safety measures, the overdoses are up this high. The prescribing's down this low, and we have a whole lot of suffering. So look, we're so grateful for your advocacy. You are a true warrior. You have been re-victimized by the system, and we are going to change that with legislation eventually. It's taking It's taken us a long time, but we have legislation in Rhode Island. Hopefully the governor signs it. We have legislation in Oklahoma, New Hampshire, preventing people with, these are legitimate people with legitimate issues, cancer, sickle cell. We've got to stop the suffering. One last question I have to ask all of my guests. Where do you find your strength?
God, for the most part. I mean, I have a very, very strong faith in God. We've spoken about that. Without that, I don't know. I don't think I would have been able to survive any of this. And then my family and friends. It really, it sounds cliche, but
your dog Griffin.
And he is really he is like a little emotional support dog. I just wanted to add one more thing, Claudia, that I think is really important to say that I neglected to say before, is in this push for, basically vilifying pain patients. They have this new thing where they're basically trying to say that chronic pain is a mental illness and that it's caused by mental illness. And so they wanted to treat it with psychiatric drugs. And so I want to warn people about that, because just be very careful. If you're struggling with depression or anxiety, absolutely. If you need help, talk to your doctor. But if you're going and you have a chronic illness and you're kind of struggling with being sad, don't tell them, because they're going to take your pain medication away and they're going to say that your pain is only because you're sad. And they're going to make you feel like it's your fault. And then
you can't be honest. We can't be honest with our doctors.
No.
So
no way.
People with mental illness and chronic pain, they have a double whammy.
Yes.
And we know people have been forced to choose between their anxiety medication or their pain medication.
Yes.
Listen, you are wonderful. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Your dog has been very well behaved.
I know.
We will continue to fight the good fight. You can follow Beverly's work on Twitter. How can people follow you on Twitter?
Well, my name is that you could look up my name, or you could look up IBD Girl 76.
IBD Girl 76, and you're also on Facebook.
I am on Facebook, Bev Schekman. You can follow me there. And if you need anything, if you need an advocate or just some information, feel free to reach out to us. Be happy to help you.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Tune in for the next episode of Don't Punish Pain with Claudia. We are here to enlighten you on what's really happening in the country when taken as prescribed and stored correctly. FDA-approved opioids remain to be safe and effective to treat both acute and chronic pain. We are here to debunk the junk science that this country has been fed with. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So why can't I get help managing my pain? It's because of the false narrative against the safety and efficacy of pain medications. If you are living with chronic pain, tell me your story in the comments below. And don't forget, if you liked what you watched today, click like, hit subscribe, and follow us on social media. Check out our YouTube channel for more great videos. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.